Now let's take a look at simple asset-based modular design. In a separate model, I've modeled a drive axle made up of various parts, and the axle has three different interfaces that it provides that you can use to connect with the rest of your system. I could include the requirements that this subsystem implements and the use cases. I could also have variation points on this item. In this simple example, I'm just defining some interfaces. To publish this drive axle into PTC Integrity Asset Library, all I need to do is make it an asset. And then you'll notice here that in the browsers I have a browser directly into the asset library database. So this is a separate database outside of the modeling environment. I can view that database over here through the asset library web browser interface, and we can see in here that there's just a load axle and an example. So it's a simple case of just dragging and dropping from my model environment into my asset catalog. It will ask me for a version, and this I would normally use the version of the model, and publish the asset for me automatically. I can now see that asset. If I move over and refresh the screen, I can see my drive axle with its design and its interfaces published from the modeling environment. So that's stage one, designing a low-level asset and publishing it. Published assets are stored in the standard OMG reusable asset specification database structure, so these are all documented that way. This means that I can define information about those assets, so I can say how long they take to build and how long they take to reuse. This is very useful when I'm working out the return on investment from reusing assets in my management dashboard within Asset Library. I have a full catalog here, and I can publish as many as I need, either from models or from parsing source code if I'm looking at assets for software, or just any type of asset that I want to document in the asset library. If I don't navigate through, I can also use the search facility to go and find an asset that I may want to use. It also provides the standard keywords and states that come with the OMG reusable asset specification. And as there are a number, I can just identify them, and it will move around in the asset view and change the view to show me them, and I can decide which one I want. It's panning around and showing me so I can find them. So I can quite easily publish, and then I can find assets that I want to reuse in my design. If there's nothing there at the moment, I could look at a catalog or maybe even an asset that's not quite right, and I can raise this flag which shows I'm interested, and when new versions of those assets or new assets are published into the catalog, I'm automatically emailed so that I can see those assets and choose if I want to use them now. Now that I've found the asset I'd like to use in my design, I can bring up the asset library browser in the modeling environment and use this as a palette to design from reusable parts and use them in my own design environment. It will ask me how I want to map it, so I'll map to SysML because I'm modeling systems here. So as we see, we now have the drive axle that's come in. If we look in the property pages, we can see that it's pointing back to its master asset library and the ID of the asset, and in fact its version, which is also shown on the diagram. This now means that we have the drive axle in our database, so I can use that on my models. So if I bring in my drive axle, I can add it in the interface, the drive input, as a port. So let's make that a port, and then I can link up this drive axle using a connector from my chassis to the axle. So as you can see, very simple publishing of reusable assets from one model, and then using them in another model and connecting them up to build a system of systems from a palette of parts. These reused parts, I can also navigate and go back and find the asset in the asset library, so it'll focus asset library for me and go and find that asset. So if I want to go and read the information about who created it and when, that's all available. I can also map from this asset and open up the other model, which has got the details, the internal white box details for that other asset in another copy of PTC Integrity Modeler. If we can then take a look at the internal design for the asset that we've been using. So that gives us full modular design. We've looked at an approach that was kind of bottom-up mining of assets and publishing them. As well as that, we can also see a top-down approach of modeling from a conceptual design of parts that maybe I want built by different teams or different organizations, and I can allocate out these parts to be designed by different teams, give them contracts through Asset Library so that they can do exactly what we've seen. They can bring in the contract with the interfaces, design all the internals, and then publish a completed asset for use in this super system level of modeling. So that's a quick introduction to asset-based modular design with PTC Integrity Modeler.